Thank you for being with us. Good to see everybody this afternoon. Thanks for taking time out of your day, as always. Kelly has just mentioned that we do have a quorum. Do want to remind all of our members that you have had a chance to look over the agenda. If you see any item where you have a potential conflict of interest, it would be important for you to tell us that now. Are there any potential conflicts of interest? If not, thank you very much. Kelly, would you like to do the roll call of members, please?
Mr. Joins,
Present.
Mr. Clark, Mr. Robert Clark,
He's here. I hear him next door. I think he's having trouble getting on.
You're on mute, Robert.
I was on mute, but I'm here.
Ms. Adams is here.
Here.
Mr. Brennan,
Present.
Mr. Taylor,
Present.
Mr. Apple,
I'm here. Thank you.
Mr. Horn, Mr. Byron,
I'm here.
Mr. Lane,
I'm here.
Mr. Marion,
I'm here.
Mr. Hutchins, Mr. Hutchins, Mr. Todd,
Yes, you're on mute, but Wes just waved to us.
yes, Mr. Todd,
Here.
Mr. Willie Clark, Mr. Willie Clark. I see him, so he may have some audio issues as well. Is there anybody that I may have missed? That concludes it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Hunter, Kelly, do we have anybody signed up for public comments today?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Righty, thank you very much. Members, you had a chance to consider our February minutes and our packages that went out. If there are no changes or additions, we'll entertain a motion to accept them as presented.
Move
Move
approval.
for second.
Mr. Apple, was that you that made the motion?
Yes,
Come on.
sir, I am. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Apple makes the motion. Ms. Adams makes the second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Ah,
I'm sorry, we cannot do it
Aye.
that way. I was hoping to get through a meeting where I actually would make that happen, but it's obvious that's not going to happen. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Joins,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
yes.
Ms. Adams said yes. Mr. Brandon,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Ms. Apple voted yes. Mr. Apple
Ye-
voted
yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Byron,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins. Give us the thumbs up. Mr. Todd
Yes.
and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
That concludes
Very
it.
good. Thank you, members. That passes unanimously. Kelly, I believe you have our first action item for consideration.
Good afternoon, members of the TAC. The item before you for consideration is the adoption of our fiscal year 24-25 Unified Planning Work Program for the Winston-Salem Urban Area NPO. As an NPO, we have the obligation to develop our UPWP for every fiscal year in coordination with FHWA and Federal Transit Administration. Each year, the NPO does develop this UPWP and identifies what transportation and transit programs and projects tasks we will be completing during the fiscal year, including in your packet are all the tables that are required from FTA and FHWA for your convenience. Some of the items that have changed since our last meeting are the movement of some projects from this fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25, just to make sure that we're invoicing for projects in the appropriate fiscal year. The City of Winston-Salem did have a project that they requested be removed. We presented that project in January, and the city did not see the need for that project to continue, so we took that off. and we are increasing the allocation of our studies. So there are a surface transportation block grant. We're increasing that, requesting the increase of that allocation from 1 million to 1.4 million to account for all the studies that we moved in this fiscal year. Finally, we anticipate doing some work with Piedmont Legacy Trails and PTRC, Piedmont Tri-Regional Council. And so the work tasks indicate what work we will be doing with them. That does not change our federal PL allocation. It's just we're listing what tasks we would do with them, and that would require probably an interlocal agreement with PTRC. Again, the information is in your packet, and be happy to answer any question. This item is up for action.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions? Members, if you haven't had a chance to glance through this, it's a pretty lengthy action item. There's a lot in there. And Kelly, thank you very much for that summary of it, because I think you caught the main changes that we need to really be focused on today. Again, any questions for Kelly? If not, we'll
Chairman,
entertain a
I move
motion to,
approval.
I'm sorry.
I move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Mayor Joyce makes the motion, Ms. Adams makes the second. Any discussion? Kelly, I remember to call the roll.
Mr. Jones voted yes. Mr. Clark? Mr. Robert Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Adams voted yes. Mr. Brannon?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Apple?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Byron?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Marion?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins? Voted affirmative. Mr. Todd?
Yes.
And Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Very good. Thank you, members. That is unanimous. By the way, there was one of our members who did catch typos in the program of work, and we won't mention who that was, but thank you very much for reading it word by word and knowing what was in there. All righty. John, welcome. You have our next item for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, TAC members. This action item before you begins on page 69 as the amendments and modifications for the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO fiscal year 2024 through 2023 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. There are a total of 16 projects listed, including 4 Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO projects and 12 statewide projects that are included in the attached item in handout. This was presented as an information item at the January meeting and was subject to a 30-day public review between February 16th and March 20th, and no comments were received. Are there any questions?
Questions for John? If not, members will entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. It's Allen.
Second, Apple.
Mayor Joyce makes the motion. Mr. Apple makes the second. Any discussion? Kelly, please call the roll.
Mr. Jones voted yes. Mr. Robert Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Brandon?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Apple voted yes.
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Byron?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Marion?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins?
Yes.
Mr. Todd?
Yes.
And Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
That concludes it.
Very good. Thank you, members. That is unanimous. Hunter, I believe you have our 5th action item for consideration.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Horn, and good afternoon, members of the TAC. The item before you is the consideration of the local input point assignment methodology for prioritization 7.0. Before we leap into the LIPA, it's first important to understand why we're doing this and what the strategic prioritization process is. With seemingly limitless transportation needs and limited federal and state funding available for transportation, North Carolina came up with a data-driven, defensible way of scoring, ranking, and ultimately deciding which projects should be scheduled for funding. The intent of the prioritization process is to balance quantitative scoring with local preferences and ensure the fair distribution of projects across the state. So as we speak, the prioritization projects that the Winston-Salem MPO adopted back in July of 2023 and submitted in fall for consideration for STI funds are undergoing the data review process and preliminary scoring on the quantitative side. For our statewide mobility projects, those are major projects like the Northern Beltway. The quantitative score that a project receives is the whole score. But for our regional impact projects, the quantitative score makes up 70% of the final score, and 30% of the final score for regional impact project is made up of local input points. For division needs projects, it's a bit different. The quantitative score that NCDOT assigns is worth 50% of the total score, and our local input points are 50%, equally weighted there. The local priority score is decided in part by our Winston-Salem urban area MPO and in part by the division in half and half quantities. And that's where this document here, the local input point assignment process, comes in. The local input point assignment process answers the question of how we will go about allocating our 1,900 points that we have a say over to influence the 15 to 25% of a project's final score. While we can't influence the high-profile statewide mobility projects, both the MPO and NCDOT Division 9 can weigh in and assign points to regional impact projects and division needs projects. And as I said earlier, we have 1,900 points that we can assign in each of those two pools. The Strategic Transportation Investments Law requires that we have a publicly accessible methodology like this one that clearly outlines how we will assign those points, and it requires that the SPOT office, or the Strategic Prioritization Office, approves our methodology. At the time of this reading, we are happy to share that the SPOT office has granted conditional approval of this methodology. And just to share a little bit about what this methodology will do, it outlines how we will score projects as an MPO, depending on the mode of transportation and funding category that it fits in, and then describes how our local evaluation will translate into the actual assignment of points in the prioritization process. Overall, this methodology also provides a general schedule for point assignment. This one is subject to change at the discretion of the SPOT office, as well as general information on where you can find prioritization information on our website. We'll continue to keep you posted as we move through this process, but in the meantime, we're happy to accept any questions on this one.
Thank you, Hunter. That was a great analysis and presentation of the salient points on that. Folks, if you hadn't gathered, there are a bunch of buckets that are allocated where we get money out of. And I think I've been doing this now for probably close to 15, maybe 16 years, maybe longer than that. And I'm just now getting an understanding of where all those buckets are and how we get the money out of them. So if you haven't as members, please have your town staff really become familiar with this, because it'll make all the difference in the world in the projects that you submit and how they are ranked and be able to move up the priority scale. Any questions for Hunter? If not, we'll entertain a motion, please.
Apple, I move we approve the methodology.
Second.
Mr. Apple makes the motion. Ms. Adams makes the second. Any discussion? If
Mike,
not,
this is
Kelly,
Robert.
please.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Are we simply affirming this policy because we certainly don't make it?
We do. So we are asking that you affirm the local input point assignment methodology. And so we, as Winston-Salem urban area MPO staff, do have some capacity to make our own point scoring methodology and develop our own rubrics. But the prioritization process itself, you are right, that's established by the state. This is just
specify how we're going to control our points.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Any other questions? Kelly, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Joynes,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Adams voted yes, Mr. Brandon,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Apple voted yes.
Yes.
Mr. Horn? Mr. Horn?
All right, yes.
Mr. Byron?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Marion?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins?
Yes.
Mr. Todd?
Yes.
And Mr. Willie Clark?
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Thank you, members. I think that is unanimous. Hunter, you have our last action item today.
Thank you, Mayor Horn, and good afternoon again, everyone. The item before you is the consideration of a resolution approving a support letter for the Winston-Salem Transit Authority, or WISTA's, grant application to the competitive buses and bus facilities and low or no emission grant programs. The Winston-Salem Transit Authority is seeking to replace 5 buses in its fleet that have exceeded the FTA, or Federal Transit Administration's 12-year and 500,000-mile useful life benchmarks. We recently confirmed with the FTA that there is an opportunity to reduce the local match commitment to 15%. And so the amount that you see in the item that states a federal ask of 4 million will actually be revised up to 4.25 million, and then the local match that will be provided by the city of Winston-Salem will be lowered to 750,000 as a result. So just wanted to note that. We also wanted to note that last year's application for this purchase came in highly recommended from FTA. They just had so many applications that it did not quite make the threshold that it needed to receive successful award. But we did get some feedback from the Federal Transit Administration, and they stated that one of the needs was more support letters and evidence of regional and local prioritization. So the enclosed letter, combined with other letters from community stakeholders, will hopefully help us achieve that application need and enhance our competitiveness in the application process. Happy to answer any questions on this one.
Yeah, Hunter, any questions?
Hey, Mike, can I chime in there?
Yes, sir, please.
When I was up in DC for the National League of Cities Conference, we met with Tillis's office, with Senator Budd's office, with Representative Fox's office. This was on our list to talk to about all of them, so they're all aware. We asked them to write a letter of support, so fingers crossed.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd
I'll
just
entertain a
like to
motion,
know,
please.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
sorry.
this is Dan Bessie. I'd just like to know that I've joined the meeting, just came straight from the commission meeting. Thank you.
Very good. And I'm glad you're finally to a meeting where we're making some important decisions. Members will entertain a motion,
Oh,
please.
me.
And move for approval.
I'll second.
Ms. Adams makes the motion. Mr. Bessie makes the second. Any discussion? Kelly?
Mr. Joins,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Adams voted yes, Mr. Bessie voted yes, Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Apple,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Byron,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins,
Yes.
Mr. Todd,
Yes.
and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
That concludes it.
Thank you, members. That appears to be unanimous. Right, members, that concludes our action items for the day. We do have 4 informational items to do a quick briefing on, and these will be considered at our next meeting. So Hunter, I'm sorry, John, you have the first one, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This item begins on page 108 and is the amendments and modifications for the MPO FY 24 through 2033 MTIP. These were presented at the NCDOT Board of Transportation March 7th meeting. Included are 8 projects, 6 for the MPO and 2 statewide projects. This item will be coming back as an action item at the May 16th TAC meeting and will be subject to a 30-day public review period in between. Are there any questions?
Thank you, John. Any questions? Hunter, you have the next item, please.
Yes, sir. This item is an information item, and it is a review of a request to transfer allocated STBG, or Surface Transportation Block Grant, direct attributable funds from project EB 5957, or the Old Winston Road Sidewalk Project, to project HL 0015, or the West Mountain Turn Lane and Sidewalk Project in Kernersville, and amending our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program accordingly. Due to cost increases, the town of Kernersville is requesting deprogramming funds from project EB 5957, the Old Winston Road Sidewalk Project, canceling that project and prioritizing programming funds from EB 5957 towards project HL 0015, transferring those available funds to the West Mountain Street Turn Lanes and Sidewalk Project as indicated in the enclosed item. Adoption of this item will amend our MTIP. And please also note that a reference to the town of Walkertown that's in the enclosed resolution will be corrected. This is all within the town of Kernersville, but happy to answer any questions on this item.
Any questions for Hunter? Folks, I think what we're seeing happening here, and I suspect we'll see happen with some frequency as we begin to get bidding on our projects that we have in the pipeline, we're finding the costs are substantially more than they were when we first submitted them. Last meeting, we had a request from Walkertown to combine projects. In this meeting, we're having a request from Kernersville. So expect to see more of these as we move forward. If there's no questions, may we please have a motion?
No vote, no
Motion necessary.
Information.
This is information.
So we don't want to take a motion on that. Can we do that kind of motion? Maybe not.
Matt Bill.
Thank you, folks. I got so wrapped up in my explanation that I forgot where I was in the process. All righty. Hunter, you also have the next one, please.
Yes, sir. And this is an information item, and it will be a review of the recommended STBGDA and TA funding from our 2024 call for projects. As a result of our January 4th through February 6th call for projects, the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO received 22 project applications from across our MPO. Following receipt of these projects, a project selection committee made up of Division 9 staff, bicycle and pedestrian coordinator, the Winston-Salem Transit Authority general manager, Town of Kernersville staff, and Piedmont Environmental Alliance made a decision. Of the 22 projects, we are recommending full funding of 16 projects at this time. You will notice that 5 projects have been flagged for further review, and a meeting to discuss those projects in greater detail is scheduled for March 27th. Justification for why those projects were flagged for further review can be seen in the committee notes section, and we will return with a final recommendation that is either a yes or a no at the TAC meeting in May. And we will also include the final recommendation 30 days in advance through our April public review documents. The funding amount recommendation that you can see on page 121 reflects the conditions if all eligible projects are awarded. And this table also makes a recommendation to use the unallocated $7.2 million in funding for a future shortfall or gap funding call to be announced at a later date. The need to prioritize project completion and identify projects that will need supplemental funding has been highlighted by Mayor Horn just a few moments ago, but it's also highlighted by our next information item. But before we get into that one, I'm happy to take any questions on this recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions for Hunter?
Yes, Chairman Horn, I have one.
Yes, sir.
Hunter, on the items that were flagged, do you anticipate any complications or anything on those, or simply questions that were brought up on the projects?
Sure. So I think our meeting on March 27th will hopefully address all of the questions and comments that we have, and hopefully get us to a position of yes. I think one of the positions, one of the questions that we have is related to project delivery. Just as an example, project HL0016, which we did vote, or the TAC voted to cancel that project, is now back on the docket through this STBG project. So I think we just want to meet with Scott Snow with Walkertown just to clarify that the town of Walkertown is indeed ready to re-proceed with that project. And there were a couple of other questions that Division 9 had regarding traffic signal warrants and other factors like that. But we should have an answer to you by early April on where those things stand and the decision that we'll be able to make from there.
So will you use data from previous studies, or we're going to try to update data? I know there were some issues, like you said, that NCDOT, the division, had. Are you going to use data, or are we going to try to update?
I don't know if you're talking about the warrants or if we're talking, so because there's 2 different issues with some of those projects. So one of the some of the projects has to do with the warrant analysis, and so I don't know what Division 9 is what conclusion they will come to when we meet with Scott. So that's part of what that meeting will determine. And then the other one that has to do with just the ability to deliver the project on the schedule noted. That's the committee was kind of questioning, given the fact that we had just sort of put that project on pause. So just some questions related to ability to deliver the project, but then also sort of the scope of the project and whether or not we can construct those.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Ms. Hutchins.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All righty, our next item, and thank you, Hunter, for kind of tipping this up in that last explanation. But we spoke on this last meeting, members, and we have talked considerably about the rising costs of projects. Some of the projects that have been kind of in the pipeline, some of them for 10 or 12 years. A number of I think, considerations that we want to look at in how we award projects, how we track projects, and how we make sure that we're making the best use of the dollars that are available to this. So we're looking at a schedule to revise how we administer the local project program. Hunter, if you'll go ahead and spend a little time here again. Members, this is a big deal for us, and it's going to come back to us in May when we're at our in-person meeting. We're going to try to keep that agenda as light as we can because we want to spend as much time as we can on this so that we all understand where we're going with it. It'll mean substantial changes in how we approach our project prioritization. Hunter.
Indeed. Thanks for the introduction, Mayor Horn. The item before you is the review of our locally administered projects report and a schedule for a revised locally administered projects policy. The enclosed report here is intended to be used as a tool to identify the age of the projects, how long they've been around since the original award date, track delivery status through various phases of delivery, such as preliminary engineering, right-of-way construction, and provide general status updates on where those projects stand and how they're being carried out by our local agencies. This is a living document and will be continuously updated for accuracy and the latest statuses as needed. In the future, it will be incorporated more as a staff report rather than an adoptable report per se. I will note that our partners at FHWA did identify a few points of clarification in the spreadsheet. So those reports are here available online now, and we will send out to the committee after. There are just a few minor changes that really fill out the report a little bit more with updated dates on PE authorization and similar to that. But really the intent of this report is to start a conversation around the importance of delivering our projects on time, developing reliable cost estimates, which can be a hard thing to do, and serve as a way to introduce why we are seeking to update our locally administered projects policy. So our revised policy will consider solutions to improve cost estimation, scheduling, incentivizing project completion, and potentially introducing regular shortfall calls for projects in our policy to address potential gap funding needs. We will come back in May for our in-person meeting with the draft locally administered projects program and policy, and then we will aim to adopt that policy by July. Happy to take any questions on the item, on the spreadsheet, on our plans for the policy, anything like that. Thank you.
Any questions for Hunter?
Mike, this is Robert. Can I ask a question?
Of course.
This is more of a general generic question, but the life of a project can be quite long from initial conception to you actually start construction and finish. Do we, and that could be over years sometimes, as that moves through, do we continually update costs because of the uncertainty
We
and
should.
the ability to forecast out reliably more than a year or two?
So best practice is we should. So that is why one of the recommendations that we will bring forth is having a shortfall call, because by the time you're done with your PE, if your PE takes 2 years,
Yeah.
there is a significant chance that your cost has gone up. So the recommendation will be that we will hold, if the TAC desires, a shortfall call for project where the municipalities can come and ask for more funding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you, members. We're entering into our staff report portion of our meeting. As is our custom, if anybody has a particular staff report they'd like to call out and have explained or presented at this time, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, we will assume that all the items on this item, if you need individual questions, you can contact the appropriate agency or individual. Anybody wish any particular reports to come off for discussion at this time? All righty, thank you. A couple of reminders. As we said, our next meeting is May 16th. We will be in person and we will be at our old stomping grounds in the Bryce Stewart Municipal Building. That's right next to City Hall. And we'll be up on our 5th floor in our where we used to be. So those of you who have been with us before know where to go. And otherwise, if you just park at City Hall, walk across the street, come up to the 5th floor, we will be able to meet you there. Reminder that there are a couple of us who haven't completed our ethics reports. So please do that as soon as you can. If you need some assistance, get a hold of Kelly and she can help you through it. But we need to wrap those up. Hey, Kelly, what's our deadline on those? April 30?
April 15th.
Okay,
Tax day.
very good. So we're coming up on it.
Mr.
Other
Chairman,
than that, yes, sir.
Will the time on the 16th be the usual 4:15 time?
Say that again, please.
Will the time for meeting in person on May 16 be the usual 4:15 time?
Yes, sir. That's what we planned on.
All right, thank you.
I know you're coming from a commissioners meeting and that makes it a little more difficult for you. I think, again, it's our members' discretion if they want to move times or not move times. I'm hoping, Mr. Bessie, you can convince your chairman that he could be a little more short-winded as you move through your agenda.
I will make every effort to be there on time. Thank you.
Run faster.
Okay, Robert.
Good.
Dan, what time do your meetings usually end?
They usually end by 4 o'clock. We had a long agenda today. Hopefully we'll have a short one on the 16th.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? If not, as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time this afternoon. Everybody have a great rainy Friday, and hopefully it'll clear up a little bit for all of our Easter egg hunts on Saturday.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, folks. We are adjourned.